Olá, tudo bem? Como foi preparar os primeiros 4 consumidores para irem para o espaço na missão espacial Inpiration 4? Vem comigo. Olá, tudo bem? Eu sou o Heverton Anunciação, consultor em tecnologia da informação e experiência do cliente. Eu estou aqui a posto já com o meu capacete. Eu criei essa revista eletrônica Person of the Week para trazer semanalmente a história de importantes profissionais do mundo de negócios e do setor de serviço de atendimento ao cliente e tecnologia. Antes de mais nada, é importante eu te convidar para você se inscrever no nosso canal, ativar as notificações para você ser o primeiro a saber do que está acontecendo. Caso você não entenda o idioma inglês, basta você ativar notificações de traduções simultâneas do YouTube, ou assistir agora, ou mais para frente. Para isso, agora para começar um pouco da apresentação, eu vou trazer nosso convidado de hoje, é o Todd Ericson, tá? Ele é um militar com várias experiências na área de testes nos últimos 20 anos, só na parte de testes, de qualidade de avião, de aeronaves. Ele tem mais de 10 mil horas de voos em aproximadamente 130 modelos de aviões e aeronaves. Ele foi um dos diretores da missão espacial Inpiration 4. Ele agora está na missão, como um diretor da missão da Polaris, do programa, que começou recentemente. Ele trabalhou como área de segurança, de testes, piloto de teste da Virgin Galactic. Trabalhou também como piloto de testes, também como comandante na United States Air Force dos Estados Unidos, que é o presidencial. É presidente da FTR Enterprise. Ele, na Virgin Galactic, ele fez todo esse trabalho de preparação de qualidade, piloto de testes, tá? Na Spaceship Two. Na United States Air Force dos Estados Unidos, ele trabalhou também nessa parte de teste de voo, segurança, qualidade, na parte de segurança de teste nas armas, que envolveria toda essa segurança. E aí, um pouco do que eu encontrei dele, você vai ver realmente que ele faz acontecer. Ele tem 52 anos, eu tenho 53, ele é um capricorniano, e realmente tem muita coisa a compartilhar conosco. Então, sem mais delongas, eu vou trazer aqui. Welcome, Todd. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Yeah.
Copy 1 Alpha.
Yeah, Todd. I'm ready for the next flight.
You're ready to go. Perfect.
Yeah. So, first of all, people, if you see Todd is not in Mars. Where are you, Todd, right now?
I'm in the Nevada desert in southwest United States.
He's working probably in Polaris project in desert for the next mission, right?
Right. I actually not, but that's a good thought. I like it.
Yeah, good, very good. So I separate something to talk with you, Todd. The first thing that I like to share with my audience about you, maybe in the future, bring it here in Brazil for you to share more things for Brazil personally here in Brazil. What was your dream when you are profession? What was dream of profession when you were a child? Now you have 52, but when you mention in the past, what was your dream?
So I grew up in an aviation family. My dad was an airline pilot. He was the one who actually taught me to fly. So we actually built a small airplane together, and he taught me to fly in that airplane. That was the first airplane I flew by myself. So aviation is in my blood. And when I was thinking about a profession, I wanted to be a military pilot. I wanted to fly F-16s. I wanted to fly fast jets and do so in the military.
Yeah,
That was my childhood dream. Yes.
yes, very good, very good. And before the next question, I'd like to show something for you.
Okay.
You know, when people have asked us about, you know, just what we're trying to accomplish with Inspiration 4, if there is a Jetsons world we're all living in and people are hopping in their spaceship and cruising around, at some point it's going to go a heck of a lot farther in the space station. So assuming that it could be mitigated, then I think it is symbolic in that it is that kind of pushing that one step a little bit forward for everything else, you know, to follow.
Yeah.
This is going to send a statement. This is the first. The first comes with a great deal of responsibility. Like, what message do we want to send with this?
No, and that's a really fair point, and that's part of the point of this mission.
So we'll talk more a bit about this one offline internally.
Yeah, we appreciate it. So.
For sure.
Cool. Typically, a NASA mission inserts into a 200-kilometer orbit. But now we're going to go about 575 kilometers high, well above the International Space Station. If we are going to go to Mars, taking a stride in that direction is vitally important. I think it speaks to really the intent of the mission, which is, hey, to now inspire, you know, and you inspire by doing things that haven't been done before.
Hey, come on.
Todd, we as we work with as project manager, we always concerned about risk. Do you think the great highest risk Inspiration 4 mission was that phase that we decide go above the higher, or you when you recall the past, you see other risk was higher than this?
Yeah, so risk is always a very interesting question, especially when it comes to space flight, because as you know, everyone knows the history of space flight is not without, tragedy and danger. But I think Inspiration 4 kind of speaks to the spirit of exploration, right? Which, you know, humankind has had, kind of indwelled in us since our beginning, right? You know, we've always tried to move forward and expand the boundaries of our life. Space is, is that next and kind of final frontier. So anything you do to go further than you've gone before is going to be some measure of risk, right? It is not without, without risk. But what we think is very important is that it is important to do these things because it is important to expand the boundaries of humanity, but it's also to do so in a way that is prudent and smart, right? That you take a risk or you move the, you move the bar further, but you do that in a way that is mindful, that is meaningful, that controls the risk so that, you're able to achieve something and do it successfully. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense. You have always to put the zone comfort and go above a little while, right?
Right.
Yeah, with safety.
And you don't want to go too far, right? And that's why it's very important to, be able to think about and understand what the risks are by going further. And then you take a small step. You don't take a giant, you don't jump across the chasm. You take small steps across the bridge.
Yeah, makes sense. As we talked before, yes, you have heard. Last month, I interviewed Seja, who is head of service and support and one of the next company of Embraer that we will have some, some people there, and they are trying to bring new ETOV, new kind of mobility,
Right.
And for sure, I like something that he has a question for you.
I thought, thinking innovation and a so different market, what were the main challenges in preparing the passengers to achieve the best experience in a so different and challenging environment. So thank you very much. Bye-bye.
So the audio came through kind of quiet, but I understand the question is, what were the main challenges?
The question is written below, Tommy, too.
Okay. Yeah. So the main challenges in preparing the, they weren't actually passengers on the flight, which is one point I think is important to make, is that they were all crew members, right? They all had a function on the mission that was critical to its success, right? So obviously Jared was the commander of the mission. Cyan was the pilot, and both of them were, in charge of, the trajectory of the vehicle and, ensuring safety of it. Haley was our medical officer, and then Chris was a mission specialist, working with a lot of experiments and other duties on board the Dragon. So I think it's a very important thing that, to make sure that people understand is, they were much more than just up there for a ride. They were up there actually doing things, experiments, working on expanding that boundary of humanity. So anyway, but the most difficult thing I think was one of our key tenets of the project was to try to expand spaceflight into a realm of people that wouldn't normally have the opportunity to do so. So there have been less than 600 people in the history of humankind that have actually been able to go to space. And that is, I think that's an amazingly small number of people since we've been doing it, since the 1960s, right? So, but that being said, those people are mostly men from the United States or the former Soviet Union. They are across the demographics of astronauts. Most are either test pilots or they are scientists, engineers. They're a very left side of the brain kind of deal. And, diversity is, I think, essential because each one of us looks at a situation in a different way. And we thought it very important on Inspiration 4 to expand, that experience to more normal people, not people that have trained their entire life to go into space. So, these were 4 people who a year before the space flight didn't know that they were going into space. And they were, men and women like you and me, which I think was one of the most important things is being able to show that this is something that is in the reach of everyday humans. And that was for us, that was a very important statement to make, that, hey, this is something that we can do, and we can expand that experience to people who haven't had that opportunity.
Yeah, very good, and very good. Now my next question is about this experience in the past. In one of my articles, where I call "Where is the artificial intelligence when you need it most?" Because
Right.
everybody's talking about the artificial intelligence, whatever. But normally, I'm concerned about where is wisdom, artificial, not intelligence, but wisdom.
Right.
In this case, for example, when this guy made a suicide in an airplane, in German wing plane, and then he didn't remember the situation. This pilot decided by himself, when the pilot went to the bathroom, he locked the door and decided to took the airplane to the mountain direct for
Right.
killing everybody in the plane. In this moment, what do you think about the status of the technology? That makes sense to decide, okay, no, I imagine an airplane decide by himself, no, everything's okay. I have food, I have fuel, everything's okay connection. I'm not going to follow the instruction of this pilot to throw this pilot in the outside, in the, you know what I mean?
Right.
What do
Right.
you think about the status of digital wisdom for
Yeah.
equipment like this?
Right. So, I will say automation, intelligence automated intelligence in a way is really why air travel today is the safest form of transportation ever, right? So, for perspective, if today we had the same rate of accidents in aviation that we did in the 1950s and 60s, we would be losing about a 747 worth of people every week, right? And so if you think about that, and accidents, are actually very few and far between now, and that is primarily because of automation, right? And so my perspective on this is that you need to automate where it is good and capable of doing. Automation is very good for routine tasks, for things that humans are poor at, which are doing things repeatedly. We make a lot of mistakes because we're bored or we just forgot something, right? Humans are very good at being able to assimilate things together, and if something goes wrong, they're able to take a lot of information from a lot of different sources, which is very difficult for a machine to do. We are not there with automation, right? So in my world, you have to pair the strengths of both against the weaknesses of both, right? And that's what makes a machine or something safer and improves things. In the German wings accident, for example, a system that I was part of developing in the Air Force, which is called automatic ground collision avoidance system, is a system that could work there. The idea there is that if you're a military pilot flying an F-16 and you get distracted, you're flying low to the ground for military reasons, the difference between recovering and hitting the ground can be less than a second or so. And this system is designed to basically anticipate that something bad could happen and recover the airplane in case the pilot was incapacitated or something else happened. And actually, to date, it's saved, I think the official number is over 7 F-16s, and pilots have been saved because of the system since it was developed. So there are technologies out there. It's just a matter of what is the cost to implement, and and what is the reward.
Yeah, and because when I think Todd, you are in desert. If something happening, for example, if you have a headache or if you sleep in the commode, okay, you can push a button, transfer the power of the airplane for the other people abroad, or automatically compute it and go into landing safely. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. So along those lines, there's a great system that Garmin has just introduced into some general aviation or private aircraft, where if the pilot is incapacitated, the passenger can actually push a button and the airplane will come back and land itself at the nearest airport. So, so these sort of things, are incremental improvements on safety. And as we solve one problem, we realize, hey, there's potentially another that we need to solve. And that's how things develop and get better.
Yeah. Todd, how long it was, and how long do you think the ideal average time to prepare a consumer to go to space? For example, okay, the Inspiration 4 was a proof of concept, and now what I think it will be the average time to prepare a consumer to go to space.
So it's going to vary widely, in my opinion, based on what the mission is, right? So I think all of us.
Similar. For example, now you have Inspiration 4. How will be the average? You think if you have similar situation like this?
Yeah. So similar situation to Inspiration 4. I think probably the minimum you could do that is in 6 months. There is a lot of training that's required, because you are a crew member. You have safety functions and things that you just have to be prepared to accomplish. That becomes different if you become simply a passenger. So in the future, right, the ideal would be that people are able to get on a spacecraft a lot like they get on an airliner, with very minimal training. right?
Yeah,
That's where we would like to go. But as in everything, you can't get there in one step. So there are little things that, as we learn, the medical piece is a big part. And that is one of the big things that we've been doing on Inspiration 4, and then as well as in Polaris program, is looking at the medical effects, because space flight and zero G affects people in different ways, and opening and basically the spectrum of people that are exposed to zero G gives us new understanding and new insights into how the human body reacts, so that we can prepare and hopefully get to a place where getting on a spacecraft is like getting on a airliner is today.
Yeah. Todd, if in my view, one of the great achievements of the space industry has been ability to reuse a rocket at launch, as was made by SpaceX. With this achievement, allow the reduction of the cost of space travel. In my view, in most of, for example, currently most spacecraft launch take place in few places in world like Florida, Russia. Can I say that a major challenge for now for space industry is in the future try to put a space area like this to landing in each airport, in at least one per country in the world? It will be possible or no? If imagine a SpaceX area land in Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, or in London, what do you think it will be the next challenge or no?
Yeah, so two parts to your question there. First, the reusability, right? The ability to reuse parts of the rocket is, I think Elon Musk and SpaceX would tell you that is what is essential. The analogy we've used is you wouldn't build a 747 and fly it from, Los Angeles to London and then burn the airplane in London, right? It just would not make economic sense if you couldn't reuse that airplane or that vehicle. Spaceflight has been difficult just because it is so costly and difficult to get to space, that reusability has been something that has been difficult to achieve. Elon and SpaceX have shown that it is possible, and it is dramatically reduced the cost of access to space. Starship is their next program, and that's going to be a fully reusable two-stage vehicle. So everything gets reused. Unlike the current Falcon 9, where the second stage basically is lost every time. On Starship, the entire vehicle will be reused. So that is, that reusability and ability to recycle is essential to driving down the cost. So I don't think that we get to anywhere practical in space in terms of lots of people until that reusability is proven out. Yeah. And so the second part of your question, in terms of every country, I do see it to the point where there will be spaceports in every country. Part of that is as we develop the technology and we get more confident in the reliability of rockets and so forth, we're able to bring them closer to populated areas. One of the reasons that Kennedy Space Center in the U.S. is on the coast is because they can launch over the water. So if something happens, there's nobody in danger below. And so as we get more confident and it becomes more reliable and routine, we'll have the assurance that we can bring things closer to populated areas. And then that opens up the possibility of going from Los Angeles to Sao Paulo in less than an hour, right? Which could be really revolutionary, right?
I hope so. Another question is I don't know if you see this campaign. I'm going to show you something.
Okay.
Hi, Mom. I'm on top of the world.
Did you see this commercial over there?
I did not. That is actually the first time I've seen it.
So,
Hi, Heverton. Hi, Todd. My name is Nicole Smith-Ludwig. I am the star of Emirates Airlines' most recent viral ad campaign with the woman standing on top of the Burj Khalifa. Todd, I have a question for you. What type of emergency procedures do you guys have in place should there be a medical emergency on board the spacecraft? Heverton, thank you so much for allowing me to ask this question. I hope you guys are having a great day. Thank you.
she sent that question for you.
Perfect. Well, first of all, I want to say that commercial
I'm
is
scared.
absolutely spectacular. I love it.
I could not work with you or for her. I'm scared of hires, you know.
that is absolutely amazing. So my hat is off. That was very spectacular, and it looks like very well done and well planned. So that's awesome. Yeah. So in terms of medical, obviously that is a major concern of spaceflight, right? Because it's not like you can just pull over and go to a hospital or an emergency room or so forth. So, much like you did for the commercial, you plan for contingencies and you plan for what happens if something could go wrong, and you try to do everything you can to minimize that. So what we did is it starts initially with medical screening, and making sure that everybody is fit and healthy. Part of our undertaking is try to understand what things are critical to ensuring safety of spaceflight, and what things can we, because everybody has something that's not quite right with them. There's no perfect human. And so, what are acceptable things to go for? So you start with that baseline, and then the next piece is training. Haley Arsenault was our medical officer, and she spent a lot of time training to administer medicines. There's a lot of thought that went into the medical kit that we brought up to basically take care of, a lot of contingencies. And then we did some, innovative things to hopefully expand the ability to diagnose and treat illnesses and issues in space. One of those was a butterfly ultrasound. Basically, it was a handheld ultrasound machine, and it actually used an iPhone as a display. Oh. And what that allowed them to do is do some experiments to see, hey, what can we really see? What can we not see in terms of the ultrasound? The next step, and one of the things we're going to be trying to do on the Polaris program, is add a high-speed data connectivity to that, so that you're able to now teleconference with doctors and specialists on the ground. They don't have to be actually in the spacecraft to do that. The wonderful thing about that is it has great implications for life here on Earth and humankind. In people in remote areas that don't have access to first world medical care, they can have a machine like that, and with very minimal training, provide doctors information that they need to know to make a diagnosis and to treat somebody in the middle of South America, or the middle of the rainforest, or in Africa, or wherever else they might be. So that is one of the things that we are really striving to do on these missions. Is as Jared has said on many occasions, it is one thing for us to be able to push the boundaries and expand our abilities to go into space, but it doesn't mean anything unless we are also able to better life back here on Earth by doing so. The history of mankind, the history of humankind, has been about exploration. We've expanded our knowledge base, and with that exploration, we didn't know what we would gain on the other end. But if you look back in history, you can see that all exploration pretty much has bettered humankind in one aspect or another. It's enabled technologies that have bettered life here on Earth. And that's what we're hoping to do with these programs. So I know that's a long answer to your question, but basically, it comes down to just ensuring people are healthy to begin with, training and equipping people to accomplish medical procedures in flight and treat people as needed. And then we on this mission had the ability to deorbit. We could have ended the mission if there was something critical and been, back on the Earth within a couple hours. Yeah. But that's still a long time to treat somebody. Yeah. But we need to be thinking about how does this all work if we're going to go back to the moon and then eventually go back to Mars. You don't have that option to return to Earth. So developing a lot of these technologies, I think, is essential to ensuring that we can, become a spacefaring civilization and a multi-planetary species.
Yeah, I think Nicole from this commercial asked this about. I think her concern is about safety, because I think she's afraid someday she goes to the Mars, make a new commercial for Mars, for the moon. If
that'd be perfect.
I think.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. It is a matter of safety, and it is one of those things that as this technology becomes more commonplace and accessible to all, we need to be thinking about how do we take care of people, because statistically somebody is going to get injured, somebody's going to get sick, and we're going to have to treat people in orbit.
Yeah. I don't know if you could guess something, but if you could guess in 10 or 15 years, how much it will cost on the same flight of Inspiration for a normal consumer? You could guess at how cost, because we have as we have a GUSP here in Brazil that costs $200,000 for I don't know if it's true, but in 10 years, 15 years, if you're a normal human being, consumer, high profile for sure, will pay for a trip like that Inspiration 4. You could guess, or it's a confidence?
Well, I mean, it is so difficult to predict, simply because, it depends on the pace of technology, right? There are still a lot of things, we've got to perfect the reusability. We've got to perfect, a lot of things. And then, like automobiles, right? Automobiles, initially used to be only available to the extremely wealthy, because there are very few of them built, and they cost very much because of that. But as mass production came along and things became more commonplace, that cost per vehicle has gone down considerably. So I think it's really going to be a matter of how quickly people adopt it, how many different uses we see for space travel, and then that drives number of flights. If SpaceX, their vision with Starship is to be flying that on a very, very routine basis, which will drive the cost down. And I think if you get the cost down for a space flight to what a luxury automobile would cost, right? I think that really opens up the ability for a lot of people to experience it, and people would be willing to do it at that point. So it's a difficult economic question.
As much competitors, more the price will reduce, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're at a point right now where, which I love about the space industry, is there are a lot of companies looking at different ways to do the same thing. And that innovation, that drive to do something better and cheaper and more reliably is a great motivator for innovation, and will make that cost go down quite quickly.
Yeah. When you say about cost, and we remember the question of Nicole, I'm going to show a new video that we are going to comment. Okay.
Job.
Okay.
So they started to push even harder to get the airplanes out. And over time, the laser focus on safety that had been traditional was compromised.
My job at Boeing was quality manager. If something's not right, you need to find it and get it fixed or get it corrected. To ensure safety, finding things was what you're supposed to do. But instead of fixing problems, everything was about speed. Everything was about getting stuff done. Let's move it. Let's get it done. You can't stop. You can't slow down.
Used to be when you raise your hand and say, we got a problem here, they would say, yeah, you're right, we're going to fix it. After the merger with McDonnell Douglas, the Airbus coming on, Boeing quit listening to their employees. So every time I'd raise my hand and say, hey, we got a problem here, they would attack the messenger and ignore the message.
So there is another documentary in Netflix talk about this situation of Boeing and the quality.
Right.
And this, for example, this Nicole Kitchens, he was fired. Right. He showed the problem. What do you think about concern about this putting together? Because there is a phrase here in Brazil. Normally the phrase said, "You never eat a sausage, you know how it is done." You know what I mean?
we have a very similar saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So I travel. We travel in a plane, but we don't. Most of us we don't know how it is done. How you comment about this situation? Boeing, McDonnell.
Yeah. So I will say that the whole situation around the 737 MAX is very complicated. It is like most safety situations, is that people like to say that there's one cause or one thing that led to the accidents. But in reality, it's a lot of things, right? So, on the Boeing side, the MCAS system was designed for a completely different function and was modified because of some regulatory requirements. And so, I think that Boeing, and I know Boeing has admitted, I've got a lot of friends that work for Boeing, Boeing knows that they should have made the system differently. They should have done it differently. But it kind of evolved from what it was originally its original inception to what it was doing. And nobody went back and questioned the fundamental assumptions, right? Which is always a difficult thing, right? You've gone from A to B, but you never really realized why you made it like A, and does it really work for B? I think there's a component of regulatory compliance here. The certification standards for airliners were established in the 50s and 60s, at least in the United States, when aircraft did not have the automation. This MCAS system is put in place to meet a regulatory requirement that is in part of the envelope of the airplane that no airliner should ever come close to even seeing in normal operations. So I think there's it highlights to me that, hey, regulations need to update for the times, because, you're compliant, putting a system and making something much more complex because of regulatory compliance, when probably it really doesn't need to be that complex, and it doesn't need to be there in the first place. And then the other part is training. You see that, humans are fallible and we make mistakes. My reliability as a pilot, in making an error, missing a step on a checklist or doing something out of sequence, is about 1 in 500 times is what a NASA study would tell you is our reliability. Now, most of the time, those things are not critical, but if you have an emergency, like what happened on these aircraft, you go from being in a very routine, relaxed environment to an environment that you don't quite understand. You're trying to figure out very quickly, and your ability to react and correct is difficult. So training is another real big part of that as well. So it's a complex issue.
Yeah.
Every company struggles with, what are valuable concerns, what are not, what are concerns that aren't, and it's a very difficult thing to do. When you have an accident, though, it becomes obvious that, hey, maybe we should have done something differently. I know from the people that I've worked with at Boeing that they've got safety in mind, at the outset, and they're consummate professionals, but that doesn't mean that people don't make mistakes and things don't, unfortunately, get through. So anyway, those would be my thoughts on that subject.
Yeah. Luis, one of our audience, asking for you, what change, if any, change, if there is change, something that change, sorry, what change, if anything, for you after this giant life experience? Would you do different next time? What you learn more and change your experience from the inspiration for next one? You have something to comment?
Yeah. So, I mean, you're right to say it's a life-changing experience, right? To be part, to be part of something that I think is historic, is an opportunity that you don't get very often in your life, right? So, to be able to go through something and know that, the 4 astronauts that we're sending into space are doing something, that I equate it to inspiration for being the start of what I consider the second space age. The first space age was where space was the domain of nation states and, large countries. The second space age is where space now becomes practical for all of humankind, to include ordinary people like you and me. So, it was amazing to be part of that. And then, it's changed my perspective and just really what is possible, right? This was something that a little over a year ago was not even possible. And to be able to, to work with such amazing people who were able to do that
because when I saw, because that's the reason, because when I brought for our interview, this part that you are involved in the meeting with the hires, I noticed the staring of your manager. Oh my God, we are going higher. So I want to come back for my wife, but
Well, I think that's one of the things that was amazing about the experience is that we were in a meeting. There were 10 of us in that meeting, and we came together. The crew obviously wanted to go as high as they could because we thought it very important to show that we are now moving towards the moon. We're now moving towards Mars. We're going past where we've been with the International Space Station for the last 20 years. We thought that was very significant to say. There were obviously some concerns, because it was a place that the Dragon had never gone before, but being able to be in a small group of people like that, experts, have a discussion, articulate, hey, this is what we'd like to do. These are the concerns. Do you think we can make it happen? How do we go about doing it safely? And then coming out of that going, hey, we're going to go higher than the International Space Station, and being able to do that, have that decision be made so quickly, and is really quite astonishing and amazing to be able to do. And I think that speaks volumes to what commercial space flight is going to be in the future.
Yeah. And now I'm going to show something, and then I'm going to ask something.
Okay.
This was a long time ago, and now recently. So I know many of pilots, they learn how to work with turbulence in the sky. How you practice turbulence in your love? How stay for a long time in the love?
Yeah. Well, so
because marriage, there is a turbulence in marriage, in love,
Right. So I can tell you that my wife is absolutely amazing, right? And and I will speak to her as she is like most military spouses out there, right? I think that she's, through my career, I've been doing amazing things, having a lot of fun doing all the things that I do. She's been the one who has been watching and supporting and making it all happen, right? And I think that she's got, and all the military spouses have the most difficult job in the world, right? I knew when I was going into danger, but she didn't. She was bearing, the responsibility of the family and everything, while I was out, doing crazy things, and and she doesn't get and most military spouses don't get the recognition that they deserve. I mean, they are the true heroes in this endeavor. And likewise, she's very understanding. She is an amazing woman in her own right. She's a very successful businesswoman, and she keeps me honest and on my toes, which is wonderful. So it only gets better with time.
Yeah, go show this interview for her, please.
You bet.
Yeah. Another question is from Mubarak from India. He's talking from India. Do you think there is life on Earth, other planets?
Oh, that is so difficult.
I believe there is. And you?
Yeah. So I'm not convinced. I'll be honest. I think that our situation here on Earth is extremely unique and precious, and I think that we can certainly create conditions for life on Mars or somewhere else, and I really think we need to do that. That's one of the perspectives from space flights that I think is unique, is that you recognize. I remember sitting in the control room and watching some of the video from Dragon during Inspiration 4, and one of the takeaways is obviously the planet is very fragile. The atmosphere is not great. It's not that big when you compare it to where they're orbiting. So there's this real understanding of how much we need to do to protect the planet that we have. And then you also look out into the vastness of space and realize how big it is, and there's a lot that we don't know. So anyway, that would be my perspective on that question.
Okay, and I'm going to show this photo, and I'd like you talk about this photo. Who is this guy, and three pieces of advice, or two or three pieces of advice you give for a younger that would like to be like yours in the future?
So that is my son, Isaac. He's my oldest boy. And I had the opportunity to give him a flight in the Alpha Jet, which is the airplane right behind us. And so he is actually a junior this year at UCLA, studying medicine, also working as an intern in some space medicine at SpaceX. So he's really, he wants to focus on, taking care of people here on Earth, and then also, he's got a vision towards the stars. So I will tell you what I've told him, and I think it's really important for anyone is you need to find something you love, that you are passionate about, that you enjoy, because when you do that, we work a lot in our lives, and if you're able to find something that you love and enjoy, it's not like work, right? So you are much better at it. I think it is also very important, to have a goal, to have something that you want to achieve. But I think even more important in the goal, and I think what most people forget is more important than achieving the goal is enjoying the journey along the way. Because if you're not having fun, if you're not enjoying the experience, if you're not enjoying the people that you're working with, getting to the end and achieving a goal is nice, but it's not the experience. So, for me, I wanted to go into space myself. I applied for NASA twice. I was a finalist twice, and I sure would I've loved to have done that. Absolutely. My heart's desire is to go into space, but I look at everything else that has happened and all that, I was able to do outside of that. And that journey has been absolutely amazing and fulfilling in and of itself. So I think it's very important for people to have a goal, something they aspire to. I think it's very important for them to do things and strive to work in areas that they love and enjoy. But I think it's most important to enjoy the ride and enjoy the journey, because it is that experience and the people that is memorable and of most importance.
Yeah, I don't know if you can talk about. I think you are now as a mission director for Polaris program.
I am.
There is a schedule for 1-2 years or 6 months to the next mission, or you cannot talk?
No, currently the first mission, Polaris Dawn, is going to fly no earlier than the 1st of November this year. So we're still trying to work out, and that's being driven by a lot of the experiments and the things that we want to get done on the flight. So, once again, Polaris, for those that don't understand, is a program that Jared Isaacman announced earlier this year. And it's really up to 3 flights, 2 flights on Falcon 9 and Dragon, and then culminating in the first flight, the first human flight of SpaceX's Starship. And, as with Inspiration 4, the idea behind Polaris is to continue to advance our understanding and our ability to make humankind a multi-planetary species. And so what we're going to use the Dragon flights for is reducing risk and preparing and helping to ensure that long duration space flight in Starship to the moon and then to Mars is successful and occurs as quickly as possible. So we named it Polaris because everybody knows Polaris as the North Star, but most people don't understand that the North Star is actually 3 stars in orbit around each other. So for the 3 missions, and then the guiding principle of, hey, we want to expand humankind's knowledge in space, but also more importantly, we're going to continue on the same theme that that doesn't mean anything unless we do things to better life back here on Earth. And so that's going to be a major thrust of the Polaris program as well.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Very good. And Todd, what was the riskiest situation in your life on project or flight? Because you face some you face a risk situation that you can share.
Yeah, I think probably the riskiest flight of my life was the first night of the Kosovo War. So I was in the U.S. Air Force there, and I had the honor and the privilege to be in the first group of NATO aircraft to fly into Serbia during Operation Allied Force. And so
you never know if you've come back, right?
Yeah, well, and I remember in our pre-flight briefing, of the 50 airplanes that were flying, they predicted that we'd probably lose 15 of us. So that wasn't great odds. Fortunately, because of a lot of dedication and skill of the NATO aircrew and all of the support personnel, we didn't lose anybody first night. And so, but anyway, that was probably the riskiest thing I've ever done.
Yeah. And Todd, about you as a consumer, you don't need to know to inform the name of the company. What was the worst customer experience you had in receiving your life as consumer?
Oh, wow. It's
if you remember.
I'll be honest. I don't remember anything.
Or you prefer not to talk with company or whatever.
No. I think the thing that a lot of companies do poorly in terms of consumer service is they don't listen to what your concern is, right? So if you say something to them and you articulate something that's not quite right, they assume something, or they don't listen to you and they don't understand and they don't take the time to actually talk to you. And I think, just doing that, simply acknowledging that somebody's got a problem and then talking to them about it, whether they can fix it or not, goes a long way towards improving things.
You said what you said make me remember one phrase of my book. You said something like in marriage, the women always say for the man, okay, I'm talk, but the man not improved.
Right.
The man is going to improve just when the girl get the divorce,
Right. Right. Yeah, you don't want to get to that point, for sure.
Yeah, that's right. So I'd like to thank you, Todd, for this conversation. I hope to bring someday you in Brazil for a nice talk with the audience in person. But I'm going to pray for everything you're dreaming over there, okay? And I hope to bring you someday to talk in Brazil. And we wish the best for you in your dreams, your work there, in the space, on the sky, or in your city, right?
Are you hearing my audio? For some reason, I lost your audio right now. But I think you can still hear me. I would absolutely love to make it to Brazil at some point. That would be absolutely wonderful. And I just want to say thank you for having me as part of the program. It's great to have a conversation. And, you know, I can't say enough about all the men and women that were involved in Inspiration 4. Yeah. And then, you know, going forward in the Polaris program, you know, Jared Isaacman making this all possible along with Elon Musk and SpaceX. But I think that vision of where we want to go as a humankind species in making things better, and then doing it, but also making sure that we better life here on Earth, I think is just amazing. And my hat is off to them for, you know, being able to do it and wanting to do it and expanding the envelope of humankind. I think, you know, the future is amazingly bright in space, and I can't wait to see what we do next.
Yeah. And my last question, Todd, for you is, if God will hire you for next mission or project, oh my God, he quit. Obrigado, eu acho que ele entendeu, acabou desligando, eu ia fazer a última pergunta, mas eu espero que vocês tenham gostado, tá bom? Muito obrigado, espero vocês, inscrevam-se no meu canal, ative as notificações, tá bom? E até a próxima.
Are you there?
I'm here.
Perfect.
Come back. Yeah.
For some reason, I could see you talking, but my audio is not working. So I hope that worked out.
My last question is, if God will hire you for next mission or project, what project or mission would you like to embrace?
Oh man, I would like to do anything that would expand the envelope, that would allow us to move further towards going back to the moon or going back to Mars. You know, there's a lot of things that need to be done. I would just love to be part of that. That's what's great about being part of the Polaris program is, you know, we're part of something that is moving things forward, right? Which is really great.
Yeah. So that was the question. I hope God choose you for next
Thank you.
For this change. And maybe as you are now 52, there is a limit of age to go to space. Or NASA accept?
No, there's not. Right now, there's not. You know, I think as long as you're physically fit, you know, there are some medical requirements, right? So, you know, that would be the only concern. But right now, there's no age limit, which is great.
I hope. Okay. I'm going to pray for God to send you for a while.
Thank you so much.
Weeks. Okay, and thank you. And don't hesitate if you need some from Brazil. Okay.
Thank you so much. I would love it. Take care.
Bye bye. Ciao.